Welcome back to this episode of Café con Letras. As we've been going through how Jesus can work in our lives through his word to make us whole, we want to tackle another topic today. We want to think about together the experience of having moments of depression. Now, I actually want to start by saying that there may be moments where you are experiencing clinical depression, and so it's very, very important that you have regular checkups with your primary care doctor, that you are expressing the things you are feeling and experiencing because it may be rooted in physical realities. And so really what we're thinking through is based upon this idea that we are people created in the image of God, physical and spiritual, and that the two interconnect. And so if you are experiencing those moments, please make sure not to neglect that. But at the same time, I think to rely simply on those things without addressing spiritual underlying realities would be to neglect an essential aspect of how we've been made. And so we want to think about how can Jesus and the gospel help to restore us in moments of depression and moments of feeling hopeless. And really, I want to read a passage, and then I want to draw out a couple things that I think could be of comfort and encouragement. I want to read 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 and on. It says like this: "For we do not want you to be unaware, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia. For we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despised of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death, but that was to make us not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us. On him we have set our hope that he will deliver us again." The first thing I want you to notice is this is actually the Apostle Paul. And as he's writing to the church in Corinth, and he's telling them how God is a God of all comfort who comforts us in any affliction. And then he tells them that comfort that he received from God, he's able to pass on to others in their times of need. But he wants to make sure that they are aware just how deep his emotional and circumstantial affliction was. He says that he does not want them to be unaware of how severe their affliction was. And did you notice the language? He says that they were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that they despaired of life itself. That is, that life itself seemed to have ended. And they seemed like there was no hope or future. So first comfort there is, man, perhaps the most important and influential Christian and missionary and pastor of all time has had moments that at least can relate to moments of depression. And so I want to draw out three things he says there that I think are important for those that would become Christians and cling to Jesus, and those that are Christians to navigate those seasons. One, I want you to notice how in the midst of the hopelessness he felt, he was still able to, with a firm hand, grab a hold of a truth that was outside of him. Did you notice that he says, in the midst of that, it was to make us rely on God who raises the dead. See, what's behind that is the conviction that Paul had that since Jesus Christ was raised from the dead, and since that was historically true, not symbolic, not made up, since he really resurrected from the dead, the God who saved him and united him to Jesus could also raise him from the dead, even though he felt hopeless. And so there's a sense in which the truth he believed was influencing, was affecting, he was clinging to it in the midst of his moments of hopelessness and depression. And so to navigate and to fight through those moments, we have to be able to cling to a truth that it's solid outside of us. And there is no greater truth, more solid than the reality that Jesus Christ resurrected from the dead. And as we are united to him, that means we are never without any hope. There's never a moment where for the Christian who's united to Jesus Christ, the hope is gone. Because what is more true than any experience we have is that Jesus Christ, having raised from the dead, will also cause us to once again be resurrected from the dead and be with him for all of eternity. We need to learn, and you need to learn, in the midst of moments of hopelessness, to speak to yourself more than you listen to yourself. Because when you speak to yourself the truth, then you are feeding the underlying beliefs that are giving rise to those emotions. I think, too, I want you to notice that Paul was able to see past tomorrow in the midst of his hopelessness because he realized there is never a situation or a circumstance, internal or external, that God can deliver me from. You see how he said it was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. Even though the circumstances we were experiencing made us to feel like we despaired of life itself. Like there was not the possibility of hope tomorrow. But because of God and because of Jesus, there's never a situation that God cannot actually draw his people out of, deliver his people from. More than that, God knows how to use the things that you think are destroying you to preserve you and to give you life. And so in the midst of moments of depression, you have to have a kind of bird's eye view perspective, which is really hard, but only speaking the truth to yourself helps you to get out of yourself so that you would see it from God's view. He can use and is using and is doing something greater than you can realize in the midst of the hopelessness of that moment. Finally, I think the other truth that Paul was clinging to and that was evident and brought him comfort is this. He knew that God deeply was going to pour out the scope of his love in Jesus Christ to him. Why? Because he hopes that this God who raises the dead is able to rescue him from this spiritual, this emotional death he felt that he had received. And he realizes that the full scope of the love of God was going to be poured out on him, and that gave him comfort. Because sometimes in moments of hopelessness and depression, we feel isolated, we feel alone, we feel like no one understands, and we feel like no one sees. And yet God in Jesus Christ can comfort us with his love, knowing that in Jesus Christ we have that good future, that he has delivered us. Let me give you some practical things outside of this truth. If you are experiencing moments of hopelessness, sometimes it's helpful to go on a run, take a bike ride, make sure you're sleeping good, make sure you're building healthy rest rhythms into your regular routine. It's not unspiritual to make sure that you sleep well. It's not unspiritual to make sure you eat well. And it's not unspiritual to go for a hard bike ride or go for a run in moments of depression. As a matter of fact, there are unhealthy ways to navigate those moments. Like if you're just eating, everyday stuff that is unhealthy for you, but there is even an appropriate time to, eat a meal that it's not considered the healthiest. Why? Because those are gifts to God from God's hand that are meant to be sources of the means of grace that God gives to us in Jesus Christ. And so I would encourage you, make sure you take a regular day of rest, a couple of regular days of rest. Make sure you learn what actually gives you rest. Don't just veg out, but what restores your energy? What restores your spiritual vitality? All that building out from the gospel itself, clinging to the hope of the gospel itself is the invitation of God as he's seeking to restore us and as he's making us more like Christ. And so I encourage you and I hope that you would fight through this, that you would not give up, because Jesus Christ is able to raise us even from hopelessness. Thank you for tuning in to this resource of Fordham Community Church. We pray that it's been a blessing to you. If you haven't done so already, we'd love for you to not only follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, subscribe to YouTube, but share with your friends. And also, if you'd like to partner with the ministry of Fordham Community Church, you can do so on our website at fccbronx.org on the Gift tab. We pray that this has been a blessing to you.